Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
All right, so welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. It's our tradition in person to go around the room and introduce ourselves, but since it's Zoom and that gets a little wonky, I will just go down the list and say, my name is Grisha, and we have George and Jeff, Andres, Bob, Cass, Charles, Chris, Christian, Daniel, Deb, Ed, Francis, Frisco, Harley, Jack, Jason, Jerry, Joe, Juan, Marcelo, Matthew, Michael, Mike G, Mike in Paul's apartment, Mike K, or Mick, Nina, Leanne, Richard, Stefan, Tom, Zenki, Zerdan, Tony. I think I got everyone. And then I'd also just like to put into the room Paul Shepard, a member of our sangha who passed several days ago. So just to have all of our names in the Zoom cyberspace room with us. And so I will introduce Reverend Liên Shutt, is a lineage holder in the Shunryu Suzuki tradition. Born to a Buddhist family in Vietnam, she received her meditation training in the Insight and Zen traditions in the United States, Thailand, Japan, and Vietnam. She was a founding member of the Buddhists of Color in 1998, and currently she is the guiding teacher of Access to Zen, an anti-racist, inclusive sangha and a nonprofit in the San Francisco Bay Area. She lives in San Francisco with her partner, exploring waterways and forests as often as they can. So I turn it over to you, Leanne. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Grisha. Thank you for the invitation, y'all. Good to see you guys. Gosh, I'm in San Francisco. I thought maybe we might have been in person, and I totally get it. Access to Zen isn't back in person either. And I'm sorry to hear about Paul's passing. Yeah. Paul, is that correct? Yes. It's hard to see the picture. Can you hold it up a little more? Okay. All right. Gosh. I'll start out by telling you guys a story. So recently I was co-leading a LGBTQ IA2S plus, right? We added some more letters and numbers there since the last time I taught there. And obviously it was an affinity retreat. And so at that center, they have residents who live there, who manage the retreat. And when it's a specific affinity retreat, they ask for the residents who are not a member of that affinity to not be part of the retreat. And part of the benefit of, they're all volunteers at the center, so part of the benefit of living there is that you get, teachings, and you get to be in the morning sit every day and hear the Dharma talks when there's a retreat, and so they were not part of that. And part of my job as the teacher is also to interact with the residents, including, having breakfast with them every day and then providing practice discussions. And so I had one with someone who expressed to me. So the thing, that came up in the breakfast a lot was questioning. There were all these people questioning if they were indeed LGBTQIA, blah, 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 right? And I will say that, I should say actually that when I started the retreat and, we do this like circle, and I was like, I have to tell you guys, almost, I think, 40 years now, I've been out as a lesbian, but I'm going to come out again with a they, right? And I've been holding this whole, because, as you notice, I'm now she, they, and if you guys even remember, other times I've been on here, I've been she, her. And I've been, kind of holding this they for a while since, for a few years now when I would say the explosion of the possibilities and the inclusiveness of that, they're more than the binary gender. I mean, I know it's been in the world and in our community for a long time, and it's become much more, since we've all started putting pronouns on Zoom and stuff, right? And to be perfectly honest, when I first did it, I thought, hey, I'm a they because I'm gender non-conforming, but then there was the whole thing about, oh no, is it really a trans thing, an identity for transgender people, and so am I, part of that whole appropriation, co-opting kind of thing. So I've been kind of not quite sure, and I was they for a while, then I took it away, and so anyway, so then I did, and I said, I'm going to really hold this gender non-conforming as part, and I think that, again, it's part of the whole community of discussion in which I think it's being more clarified, more and more. So what, like, to be honest, gender queer is still kind of vague for me. What does that mean exactly, right? So I did come out in that sense, and then, so anyways, I was having this discussion with this resident, and they were like, I'm questioning, and it's because in part I'm like, most of my friends are queer, most of my friends, that I have Dharma discussion with are too, and I would just feel like I could just benefit a lot from a retreat like this. So what do you think? Is it okay that I'm questioning? And I'm like, yeah, I think it's fine, and it sounds like you're questioning, and I celebrate that. And I will, and to me it was more that they were like, well, I would like to come to this kind of retreat, and I'm like, I think, wow, I think it's great that, at least in the Bay Area and the United States culture in general, we have really expanded the sense of the possibility of, being able to be queer, to be non-binary. We have a kind of like a niece in our family. By that I just mean not blood niece. That, recently we're in discussion with what is they're 20 and what is their, sexual orientation. And so we said, are you queer? Are you bisexual? How do you identify? And this young person was like, well, we don't call ourselves those. We're pansexual. That's, and the 20-year-old in the Bay Area, that's the word now. And, and I live to, Queer Nation and all that. So, so there's this really sense that, like, the society in the United States and the Bay Area has really expanded, and there's a lot of freedom to identify ourselves in different ways. And I celebrate that. I do. And I was talking to this person, and I said, but that it isn't just the freedom to identify, right? Again, I celebrate it. And are you willing, do you understand that it comes from an oppression? That are you willing to identify as one of us if they ever come for us, which they have historically? So for oppressed groups, it is the freedom from hatred that we are talking about when we take on identity in a way that's open and affirming, right? So to me, it really brought up this very different sense, whereas mostly in, when we think about freedom in the United States, we talk about, I have the freedom to, I should have the freedom to love whoever I want, I'm putting it in that framing, right? Buy whatever coffee I want, wear whatever jeans I want, do this, do that, right? I should have the freedom to, and again, I celebrate that. And our practice, especially as Buddhists, in my opinion, is that we're practicing for freedom from. Freedom from clinging, of course, is the main thing. And from an oppressed position is the freedom from hatred. This is where I think it's really important to name ourselves from the community. And there's a whole different thing when it's part of being a community oppressed that defines itself. So so that's been really something that's like, I've talked about freedom to and freedom from before, but I really thought of this as, this is what we're doing. And so I want to offer to you guys today skillful effort from the Eightfold Path as ways to work with freedom to and freedom from. So, as many of you probably know, the Eightfold Path, of course, is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths. Do I need to go through them briefly? Should I? Okay, classically, or actually I will give you my engaged version because it goes with it. The first is, since it's a restorative model, the engaged Four Noble Truths, we begin by saying that in life there's harm and harming. We just take it on as true. And then the second is, usually is, and it's similar with the classic, which is that there are causes and conditions for the rising of dukkha, or harm and harming. Third is that there's actually agency in the midst of hurt and harm. Classically, the third noble truth is that the end of suffering is possible, or the causes and conditions for dukkha can be ended, alleviated and ended. And then the fourth, of course, is the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is broken into three sections, or there are 8 of them. There are 3 sections. And first is the wisdom, which is, right, again, classically it's right. Right as in complete or whole or perfected. More recently, the word that's been used more is wise or skillful. And I'm going to go with skillful because to me it implies both what is skillful and how to be skillful, which I think is the greatness of the Eightfold Path, is that it's both descriptive and prescriptive, right? It says this is what it is and this is how you can do that. And we're going to meet that in the skillful effort. So, again, skillful wisdom is, the 3 groupings are wisdom, classically in this order, wisdom, ethical conduct, and then the samadhi or the meditative third. So the first third is skillful view or understanding, which is to understand the Four Noble Truths and to understand karma. The second aspect of that, and that is skillful thinking. And in Buddhism, thinking is very much purposive, so a better translation these days is skillful intention, or I myself prefer skillful motivation. Right? So that's the wisdom. So this is how you frame your life, right? That you're understanding the world. In Buddhism, as the Four Noble Truths, as understanding karma, cause and effect, and to understand that our thinking is purposive. It's the drive towards the second third, which is the ethical conduct, or I like to say the compassionate connection third, because it tells us how to behave with each other, which is skillful speech, skillful action, and skillful living, or skillful livelihood. And the third grouping is skillful effort, skillful mindfulness, and skillful concentration. Now, while it's put here as a third, often it's actually considered the bridge between the wisdom aspect and the ethical aspect. Because in meditation, what we do is we say, oh, am I behaving, the ethical conduct, in accordance with my values? And perhaps sometimes my values need to change to be in accordance with how we interact. And in some ways, this is how we can understand as this expansion of the sense of gender and sexual orientation, as that the values of society has shifted to meet the actual living experience. Right? So this is, and in meditation, as individuals, we are balancing out or harmonizing. Am I living in accordance to my value, and am I acting in a way that reflects my value? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, skillful effort is technically in the meditative quality, because it is usually talked about as ways to work with your meditation. And it's first in that because skillful effort is towards, are you being skillful towards your motivation? So it goes back to actually the wisdom third. Are you meditating, or is your meditation practice in accordance with the Four Noble Truths and understanding karma? And is it understanding that how you think, your motivation really works, right? So in skillful effort, you could frame it as, am I using the energy as I effort in a way that's in accordance with my values, or in accordance with understanding what's important in life? And of course in Buddhism, what's important is so in the skillful effort, there are 4 ways to work with your effort. And let me go ahead. Maybe I should tell you first a little bit more about skillful. Let's see. Meditative quality. Meditation. Yeah, okay. All right. So skillful effort is in accordance with understanding the Four Noble Truths and your motivation. Maybe I should pause and say skillful thinking or motivation is 2 groupings. Love these groupings in Buddhism. Okay? First is that the Buddha noticed that when you're in the quality of your thinking or your mind, there are 2. One is what's classically called the unwholesome, right? Which is thoughts of greed, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of hatred, sometimes even to the point of violence. And then the other grouping is the antidote to those. So the antidote to greed is renunciation. The antidote to ill will is metta, or goodwill. And the antidote to hatred is karuna, or compassion. Okay? So switch to skillful effort. Remember, it really is the bridge between your values and your action. So in skillful effort, we're practicing the skillful in skillful effort is towards renunciation, towards goodwill, and towards compassion. Is that clear? Okay, so that's what's wholesome then in skillful effort, or skillful. Okay? And so they're also broken up into what's wholesome and unwholesome. So there are 4. Many of you probably have heard of them. When it is unskillful or unwholesome, you want to prevent it from arising. And once it has arisen, you want to abandon it. I'm going to give you a thing in chat in a minute, but let me just say them. If the effort is deemed skillful, but it hasn't arisen, then you want to cultivate it to arise. And if it is already skillful, that's present, then you want to extend it. Okay? So in the classic teaching, it's usually prevent, abandon. I can't remember what C is and A. I made up the acronym PACE. That's what I just said to you all. The P is for prevent, A is for abandon, C is cultivate, E is for extend. So PACE works out. So I want to really say that what we'll define here in terms of what I'm talking about today as the unskillful. When unskillful is about hatred. we're talking about oppression here, and specifically as, homophobia, heterosexism, all right? Gender oppression. Okay, so, for instance, we come to affinity groups as a prevention. When you say, so of course in anything that could be dependent, sometimes you're preventing, sometimes you're cultivating, but so just follow this with me broadly, right? So in a sense, don't you come to affinity, like today, you come to this group and you're all regulars, you come here because on a Sunday you can choose some other sangha to go to, but you come here because there's already some sense that there's going to be a prevention from homophobia. Right? What did you say? Am I just talking to myself? Okay, thank you. Some response. Okay, so that's a kind of prevention. In terms of being queer, we go to queer bars as a prevention. So we go to the Castro, hopefully as a sense of prevention. Right? So these are preventing from hatred that's already out there against us. Now, once unskillful has arisen, I think abandon, on a certain level, we would think much more, as I would say, as internalized homophobia. How do I prevent that from, when I hear myself talk to myself in a certain way? In a way, taking on the they, for me, is abandoning that sense that I have to conform to being a she or a he. Right? I'm abandoning the language of the dichotomy of the binary, right? That we have to be one or the other. I put in my name. I rename myself with a territory. This is an abandoning of understanding that this land was free and gotten by Christopher Columbus and the rest of us, right? When really this is a kind of abandoning of the sense of imperialism, colonializing. We telling a truth to abandon untruth. Yeah? Cultivate the wholesome or the skillful when it's not already here. The best way, I think, is the antidote here of hatred, which is karuna. And that's why I wanted to give you some of that in the meditation. And just to remind you, right, the phrases are about how do we work with our pain and suffering? How do we bring tenderness to it? How do we forgive ourselves and others? Remember, if we were doing the whole thing, we would be sending it to others. All right. I see that, let's see here. Mike is basically cultivating Paul's presence here this time, right? And as a reminder to us, right? So I will say, let me just say a little bit more about compassion, because it is, I think, sometimes we think, oh, compassion, la, 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 so great. We should just learn to, be kinder to each other or something. And really, it's a hard practice, compassion, because fundamentally, compassion in the Buddhist sense is the wish and the practices to alleviate and end suffering. That's huge. It's not just to feel good about ourselves. So that's part of it. And I think as oppressed people, we do need it to use it as a way, as a balm, as a salve for the hatred that we've internalized. And that's why I just did the I in the meditation. Here's from Gil in Cultivating Compassion. He writes, Gil Fronstone, one of my teachers. Compassion is a form of empathy and care that wishes for the alleviation of someone's suffering. Instead, it's possible to actively develop our feelings of compassion and remove the obstacles for feeling compassionate. I'll just read that sentence again because I really messed it up. Compassion is a form of empathy and care that wishes for the alleviation of someone's suffering. It's possible to actively develop our feelings of compassion and remove the obstacles for our feeling compassionate. Because people sometimes confuse compassion with feelings of distress. It is helpful to clearly distinguish the two. Compassion doesn't make us victims of suffering, whereas feeling of distress on another's behalf often does. Learning how to see the suffering in the world without taking it on personally is very important. When we take it personally, it is easy to become depressed or burdened. We can avoid taking it as a personal burden or obligation if we learn to feel empathy without it touching our own fear, attachment, and perhaps unresolved grief. This means that to feel greater compassion for others, we need to understand our own suffering. Really, this has come to what I really think about, that a function, as many of you know, I deal with social justice a lot. So what I've been thinking also about is that depending on our location in the system of oppression and domination, our function and how we work with the hatred is very different. When we're in the down power position of an oppression, for instance, being queer and homophobia and heterosexism and gender oppression, then our task really, not exclusively, and I think it's totally key and important, is to heal from the hatred that we've experienced, some of the impact of the oppression. And so the individual practice of how to be free from hatred is really important. If we're in the upper power position, for instance, I'm generally able-bodied, and the up power in ability oppression, then my function then is to practice to heal the structure that is oppressive around ability. Does that make sense? So one function or responsibility changes as the condition changes. So, and I think that in practicing to overcome the hatred of impact on us as oppressed people, that's how we get more settled so that we can help others, right? This is how, and I think you guys have small groups, I think I remember, right? And I don't know. And then I presume part of your asking if they're new people, I remember when we used to meet in person, is maybe some of you would, actively go seek out the new people afterward, because this is a kind of, not to use the word, big brother in a good sense for, for someone who's new to the community. Because I would imagine that, being called gay Buddhist fellowship, that there might be some people coming out and some people really questioning and working with their gender identity who would come to you all, and so you would kind of mentor them, right? I would think that would be part of things. So this is a kind of cultivation practice also. It could also take us to the last one, which is E, is to extend. Now, when a skillful is already present, then we want to figure out how to extend that. I would say that when I'm more settled in having healed, or our healing, I don't know if there's an endpoint, to the internalized hatred and the impact of structural oppression, in this case, homophobia, that I would hope that my practice would be to figure out how to extend the safety and the protection for others. And also in my presence as being settled about who I am in the world, and the comfortableness, helps to extend that. I'm starting to feel, older now for sure, but, seemingly, on one level, to be perfectly honest, I'm really kind of jealous of all these youngins that are like, oh, we're pansexual, we're, being whatever. It's just so easy for everyone. And I remember the days when it was really hard, I thought, to come out. And I'm not denying that it's still hard for some people. Really, I'm not. And so, and I remember that, I still occasionally people will reach out to me who's like, I don't know if you remember, but, when we were in high school or college together, when you were out, you really supported me to understand that being a lesbian was okay. And now I've come out too, and I just wanted to let you know. You know, you guys probably have experienced things like that. So that's a kind of being ourselves, loving ourselves as we are, being patient with ourselves, taking on this identity and building fellowship, literally in your case, right, is a way to extend, right, the skillfulness of overcoming hatred. All right, let me finish with Gil in the same. It says, compassion is inextricably linked to the Buddhist practice of liberation. It can be the motivation for this practice as well as the result. As one's inner freedom grows, when capacity for compassion increases, as one compassion increases, so does the importance of freedom. Liberation supports compassion, and compassion supports liberation. They both benefit when they go hand in hand. Thank you for your attention. I really want to open it up for any thoughts, ideas about this. And you guys know I take challenges.
Jeff's hand is up.
Jeff, yeah.
Hi, Reverend Leanne. Thank you for your talk. I appreciated especially your distinction between when we feel compassion for someone's suffering, that we are hoping that they have the relief from suffering, rather than compassion being our distress about their suffering. I think that's a pitfall that a lot of caregivers get into, is feeling, oh, my friends all have COVID, or my friend lost their ability to walk, and that is sad, but I think it's good to be reminded of the root in wanting her suffering to be alleviated. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just reference that those skills. So it's a good distinction you brought up. Thank you, though. All right, Bob. I didn't say, or any stories about a P or A or C or an E. Let's just share stories too. That works.
Well, it's not that. You were mentioning about all the letters and numbers of the alphabet that are describing so many different identities that people are trying to get respect for. At least I think that's what they're doing. But I guess I'm simplistic. If I respect who you are without labeling how you label yourself, is that wrong? Is that a negative? I accept you. You can define yourself however you want, in whatever location, in whatever circumstances, and I just accept it without giving it a label. Am I being silly, naive? I don't know.
Bob, so you're saying when you accept it without what?
Without prejudice, without judgment. Uh-huh. People identify, I remember when we talked about the rainbow, uh-huh, and now people are trying to put different colors into the rainbow. And the rainbow was meant to say everyone. Uh-huh. And I'm willing to stick with that concept of the rainbow is everyone. I don't know if we need to identify so many different colors in the rainbow. Uh-huh. We just accept everyone. I accept how you are. I accept how he is and she is and they are. And I don't even have to say whether it's he, she, or they. I accept you without judgment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the distinction I'm trying to make, Bob, which is that I think it's a very different thing to say, I'm okay with things as it is, and people can have the freedom to be whoever they want to be. I think it's a different thing when we think of it in terms of systems of oppressions. Then in a structural sense, then it is how is there freedom from? And just as we took back the word queer as a way to affirm queerness and not be and not have it be a word that is derogatory, the broad sense of queer nation, right? So that was for us saying an identity does matter, and what I call myself needs to be accepted in a bigger sense. And so that's a freedom from hatred in that movement. And so I think when people want to be included in the, or expand, is a better word, expand the binary, say, of gender of she and he only, then that's a asking to remember that there's more here. And also, to be perfectly honest, for me, as a Buddhist, it just reminds us that there's so many variation. And in fact, we're practicing to open, actually, to more definition of what is suffering for others and for ourselves, because I know I've expanded my sense of what I thought is suffering for myself. And the irony, I think, in Buddhist practice is that when we can expand that, it actually, we suffer less. It's kind of like that sense, when you open up, there's going to be more. It's almost like we open up a window of tolerance. You know that expression, right, from trauma. And when we open up our ability to be inclusive of more and more difficulties, of more and more definitions, of more and more of what is helpful to be part of the whole, right? Then it actually benefits us all, because then we can just accept each other. This is the difficulty, right? Is that people don't just accept each other. And that's why we need to expand it so that people feel included who hasn't felt included before. Just like I know it, I had another story I was going to tell, which I didn't tell, but, well, maybe I'll just say it briefly here, which was in the late 90s. I was with a Asian lesbian group, potluck group. So you guys go ahead and laugh. Yep, lesbian potlucks, yep. And we met, I can't remember, once a month or something. And they're all Asian lesbians, right? So then it started, I think someone who these days might be a they, it was like, I think it was me, actually. I brought like a mango like jelly thing, but I had added something in it. And so it just took it up a notch. I'm a foodie. Took it up a notch. And when someone said, oh, can marry. Because so many Asian parents, one, wouldn't accept you being out, right? Like everyone in the family, your extended family, know that you're a lesbian, but you just don't talk about it, right? And then they keep wanting you to, when are you going to get married? Like, it's just the big thing. And we all are working within that. And so it's kind of like this inside joke, like your mother say, oh, can marry, right? Because now you're marriageable because you can cook a decent dish. Totally stupid, from the lesbian point of view, for sure. And yet it became this in-joke so that we could, I think a cultivation of from hatred is, that's why you have inside jokes, why you have humor that works from inside the community that doesn't work outside. Like if someone said that to me from the outside, I'd be like, fuck you. But, from ourselves, it becomes this in-joke because we're overcoming that oppression in a way that expands its meaning to more than what it has been imputed on us. And I think that's really key. Right? And so again, when we see it from a system, or when we're in a position of power, then it's useful to remember, oh yeah, the people who want to be included haven't felt included. And so if we do, myself, Bob, I think if I am really okay with how they want to identify me, then what is another color on the rainbow? Because, maybe when we expand our sense of, these days for real, right, of our sight, we might be able to see brown and black on the fucking rainbow. I don't know, Bob, but I think it's possible, right? And white, you might see a lot more colors in the rainbow than what right now our visual eyes can see. Does that answer your question? Or meets it? You're muted again.
Well, I'll just briefly mention everyone knows I was a social worker at San Francisco General Ward 86, and for a decade or so. And when I would sit down with someone, they would walk into the room and I would just accept them immediately, encourage them to start talking, and whatever they said was okay. And that's where we started. We started where they were, everything was accepted, and we went from there. There was no judgment. And I think I would love that we could all just accept others without judgment. Maybe I'm being too idealistic or naive.
Well, I think that's a great aspiration, but Anne, my guess is that it took a lot of work to get that unit put together, and there were people outside the unit who didn't agree with that. And my guess is, as a social worker, being one myself, that you probably advocated. I mean, this is the thing. Interpersonal relationship is one thing. I could say I accept you however you are. But when we leave that space and systems of oppressions like hospitals, right, and other institutions, come on, we had to work to have certain units. We had to work to have certain acceptance of what is defined. Who gets to go in and see somebody when they're sick, for fucking goodness sake? So, it's this is why we have to see it beyond just an interpersonal. I mean, I think it's lovely as an interpersonal, and certainly that's part of our practice. And our practice, I think, as Buddhists, is why it works really well with being social worker too, is that it's about how do we make it more and more inclusive. Can I move on?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right, Risha, I think you were first, and then Mike.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love Buddhism because it has all these lists, and I like your PACE acronym. Thank you for that. And I like how you apply it to daily living, because sometimes that's hard for me to take the Pali words and the theories and the lists and think, well, what does that mean for today? And I'm really latching on to extend, because and I like the challenge of the pronouns too, because I know some people are really kind of against it or really for it, and I have friends especially in 12-step groups when we're in and people are renaming themselves, and we'll be like in our text message being like, well, my pronouns are girl, 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 or something like that, just to joke about it, but like, it's a challenge. The thoughts that come up are not like lovey acceptance automatically. So I have to extend, and I have to abandon those and extend it. Like, if you want that, then, you deserve it, kind of thing. And like, who am I to say, get over myself? I don't know if these thoughts are going to connect, but like, I recently have had a couple of friends who transitioned genders. And so I now have a more close eye view of what it's like to change your gender and what it's like to feel like truly accepted in the way that you want to be accepted, even though like me, old school queer from the gay bars and the drag queens, is like, I have a certain response, like emotional, mental response to that I need to abandon and extend into something else. And one of the things I did over the summer, I downloaded from the New York Times this list of the 100 greatest gay novels. And I started reading them while I was on vacation in Barcelona and had COVID. And it was like, oh, God, I forgot that that's what people went through. Like they were all these tales of, this is like homo fiction, oppression, get married anyway, hide, sneak into the bathroom, sneak into the woods. Like the way that life used to be. And because of what activism happened before I was born or right after I was born, I don't have to go through that. And so it feels like it's just another extension of that now. Like we are evolving more and more and more. And it challenges my self-righteous indignation, which I've learned is one of my strongest character defects. Like it's, I know how everything should be. It's just a challenge. So I really appreciate the idea of, like, when I get a thought, I'm going to say to myself, ooh, let's abandon that. And let's extend compassion and extend extend myself. Like, it feels weird to accept this thing that this person wants. I don't know how. Anyway, I've run into it not just with pronouns, but like with just the way people behave, the way people you see on the streets, walking through, being in San Francisco. I live right off of Polk Street, and there's so much blight right now, and I just hit it with these like, visceral responses that I don't want to have. I want to abandon them. I want to extend compassion. I don't even know what it looks like, but anyway, I'm blathering on. So thank you for your talk. It kind of opened up my thinking.
Great, thank you. I don't think I need to say anything. Thank you. I'm glad it works for you, and I appreciate your examples of extending. Mike?
Oh, thank you for your talk. Yeah, I just want to make a couple of observations and raise a question. I not only lived through the early days of gay liberation, and not way back when they had the California Hall, they had the busted parties, and not in the 60s, but early 70s, and the Harvey Milk time, and the post-Harvey Milk and AIDS. I actually was in Ward 5A myself in the early 90s a couple of times. But getting back to relevance of three different pandemics, I guess I'll use that word. I don't know how it applies to all of them and how they relate to our community. The most impactful one for the world was COVID, which is not specific to our community. Anybody got it. Lots of people who were not gay had it, and people still have it. But the other two were AIDS, which I survived. My partner didn't, and Paul did not die of AIDS. He had the virus. He did not die of it. But my lover did, and I survived it. And the spiritual lessons for that, and I wanted to comment also on monkeypox, because it's spreading among gay men, and I have judgments about it, the lessons, and I have my ideas about what we, quote unquote, should learn from it. And yet, I'm not going to share those because we all have our own. Anyway, if you want to comment on the role of these various so-called pandemics and how we can learn from the suffering. Thank you.
Gotcha. I'm not sure. Kind of broad, Mike.
Sorry, I'm not really always very focused with my questions. But what are you thinking anymore about what our struggles will be around the latest one, which is monkeypox, which is affecting a lot of, not maybe lesbians, but a lot of gay men, even from hugging or from long-term sleeping together, just cuddling, which is an experience many of us have. Even older, we may not be even very sexually active, but still cuddle a lot. Thank you.
Well, one, I will say that probably most of the people in the other rectangles would be better at addressing this than myself, being a lesbian. And I will say that, I think that the things we learned from surviving the AIDS crisis and from the pandemic, and on one level, I will say, maybe I'll just say this, and maybe I'll be like, I'm not sure it all connects. It connects in my mind. Let's see if it connects in you all's mind. One, when stuff started to come out about smallpox, and I will admit that I've been writing. My book will come out next August. So I've been at Russian River, and a lot, which is and my girlfriend, just being funny, he's calling me a river monk. And so I've been a little bit isolated. And so I'll admit to that. So I don't listen to the news a lot and stuff because I'm just writing. And when this information started to come out, I have a lot of social justice friends and they're like, why are they framing us, just a homosexual and, bi men thing. And, is that being, doing this oppression kind of thing in the media? And I said, well, possibly, and the media will do that. And I know that during the AIDS crisis, the the queer community really wanted more and more medical information, and that was part of our fight. It was like, get the fucking information to us, right? And so, having worked for the Department of Public Health as a contractor, as a social worker in San Francisco a few years ago now, or over 10 years ago now, or 10 years ago now, I trust the San Francisco system a lot more than others. And I think that so the data from San Francisco, on one level, I could trust more. And then two, because of that experience about not getting enough information, I just want to make sure that, the gay community is getting enough information and that vaccines and whatever is needed. So on that, I think we can learn from, hopefully, honestly, maybe because I'm a social worker, I think my thing is always thinking, how do we work so that different systems will give us the information we need, give us the medication we need, give us the support we need. And so my work is always about coalition building and connecting to people who have power to affect how we get care. So hopefully anything we learn from the AIDS crisis, and on a certain level, perhaps not to frame it as just a gay issue, because it is affecting other people, and that's how, when people realize that it's going to affect them too, then they're more willing to put resources behind it. So I don't know if that supports you. Yes, go for it.
Well, I just want to add that I guess the main thing is compassion, to get over the fear. As we know, during AIDS, many caregivers, at first, some wouldn't even enter the room if somebody had AIDS before they knew how to spread. And to get past the fear of getting monkeypox from somebody, because I'm a little afraid of that, hugging somebody, holding their hand more than 2 minutes or something. I don't know, there's no time limit, whatever, but I mean, I'm a little afraid of it. But it's like just being careful. I mean, we can still wear gloves. I mean, as disgusting as that sounds, we can still do that if we're worried about it. But we can still hug, we can still cuddle, we can still wear masks to prevent COVID, etc. Learn how to love each other despite all these things that seem to happen.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Maybe the only thing I'll add to that is, I think part of compassion, which I had down, but I didn't want to, I felt like I do want to have a conversation with you all. So I think the hardest thing about compassion is actually to be with our own fear, and you brought it up. And I'm not so sure about getting over it, because, I don't know, it's hard to get over anything. In my business, that's why I have a business, teaching letting go, essentially. And so, to me, the easiest, the hardest, and certainly to me the most efficacious response is how do we go to meet fear? And I think part of how we meet fear is that we're open about it. And so admitting to being afraid, being able to talk to each other about it, and then to come up together with, this is hopefully what we learn. I mean, hopefully what we learned from the AIDS crisis, what we learned from being queers, what we on a certain level, the more and more, I think us oppressed people have it all, because we had limited, structure to tell us how to be. Well, a lot of structure told us how to be, and we had to make our own in so many ways. And a lot of that has to do, okay, well, this works for me. How does that work for you? And so hopefully we had more communication about it. And I think that's always a good thing, to define for ourselves what is fear here? What are the things I'm afraid about? How do we meet this together? How do we overcome it together? How do we negotiate it together? I think those are skills that applies in all conditions, and especially challenging ones. I think that's the key, right? Is how do we stay open to being vulnerable, to saying, I'm scared, I don't know what to do, and then to certainly trying and that's why we also need really clear information so that we don't pass on. I think maybe the big difference maybe from the AIDS crisis is that information just goes to the fucking internet so fast. Sorry, I keep swearing, I'm trying to practice, but it goes through so fast, and there's so much misinformation out there that if anything, to actually make sure we get correct or more up-to-date and clear information so that we can negotiate and conversate together.
Thank you, Reverend Leanne. We need to wrap up, actually. Will you be able to stay on for a few minutes after the, okay, so if you have questions or more comments, Reverend Leanne will stay on for a little while. At this point, we wrap up our meeting together. The Pali word for generosity, dana. Please consider giving dana for this sit together. We use the dana for honorarium for our Dharma speakers, the rent we pay at Bartlett Street, our quarterly newsletter, and there's a link in the chat to donate. And are there any other announcements? Go ahead, Richard.
Yes, I just want to remind people that on Wednesdays we have a GBF group that meditates for a half hour. Then we generally have a discussion about some topic, and everyone, of course, is welcome to join. It's the same link for Sunday, 7:30 to 9.
All right, thank you. Any other announcements? Mike, go ahead.
Hi, Grisha, and hi, everybody. I wanted to follow up on Grisha's announcement earlier about the death of Paul Shepard. I know Paul didn't know everyone here by any means, but I knew Paul for many years and was shocked to learn that he had died. And I don't know anything about the circumstances. I think Peter may know more, but I think it would be great if, for those people who did know him, if there was interest in doing some kind of memorial thing. I don't know what form that would take. It could be virtual, it could be in person, whatever. But he was a longtime member of this sangha and certainly was interested in it and knew a number of people. So I don't want us to forget him in this event. He had been in poor health for the last few years, and he also suffered from depression, and so he had withdrawn a lot, I think. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Mary, did you want
Mike,
to chime in on that?
It's me.
Mike, maybe you can put your
more
address in the chat, your email address for people who are interested.
It's a good idea.
Are you talking to me?
It's just everyone.
Okay.
If you're interested, put your email in the address in the chat, and then we can create sort of a list of folks that want to get together or do something in the way of a life celebration. And Mike, do you know of anything that's happening officially?
Yeah, I have a question. I tried to call the Buddhist, one of the Buddhist temples in Berkeley to get a hold of them to see if they would arrange some sort of memorial. I haven't had much luck. Maybe one of you guys would know something about contacting one of the temples over in the East Bay. And of course, if San Francisco's a very, very gay-friendly one over there, maybe that is appropriate. But he lived over here, so either place, if you know a temple. I can't seem to find a way to get somebody.
Yeah, I think he had become somewhat isolated in recent years. And anyway, I don't know who is connected to him. It'd be good to find out. Grisha, I can't find out where to put my address and email in the chat.
I can put it in there for you, and I'll put in mine too. So, we'll just start a list of folks that want.
Be great.
Jeffrey Snyder from San Francisco City Center might be helpful.
Oh yeah, great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, do you have an announcement about the newsletter, or are you all set?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The newsletter is coming out a week early, or we hope so, in 2 weeks. But since we're all remote, there have been half a dozen volunteers in addition to the usual newsletter group who will be putting it out remotely, I guess it is. So we're fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Donald Rothberg is going to be our speaker next week. He's a member of the Teachers Council at Spirit Rock Center, a teacher in the East Bay Meditation Center, and you can read his bio in the chat there or on the website. So tune in next week for that. And any other announcements? Okay, Reverend Leanne, do you want to do a dedication of merit, or should we use our GBF?
Let's do yours.
All right. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness, which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Everyone, thanks for the clarification in the chat. All right. See you all. Let's see.
Thank you, Leanne, for your talk. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Zenki. See you.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Cassie. Good to see you.
See you.
Love your art.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.